Hi there, I'm Zach Kircher, and you're watching Kircher Talks Entertainment. So a couple of weeks ago, I posted a video kind of talking about the little sabbatical I had from making videos for a bit, while some of that was just to try to recenter a little bit on what I wanted to do with this channel. Another thing that I did during that sabbatical was immerse myself in some of the games that I've really been enjoying. A thought that wouldn't leave my mind as I was playing is an idea that came up for a video. With regards to video games, I like to keep up with the business side of the industry because, I'm in business. I work in, an office, outside of doing these YouTube videos. So I enjoy getting to know what's going on in the realm of the video game business as much as I do just like playing games in general. And so with all of that being said, one thing that has not left my mind for the games I have been playing, they have been an incredible value for what I've gotten. And I think that's important because this year we have seen a tremendous increase in price for a lot of different things regarding games, and including the games themselves. I mean, if you were to get a so-called AAA game for MSRP, most you're going to find for $70 retail, but now you have like Mario Kart World, which released for $80, and I talked about that several months ago. And no doubt, companies are going to keep on trying to raise prices for video games. I mean, Microsoft tried it with Outer Worlds 2, and that of course got a whole bunch of backlash. And then inevitably when GTA 6 comes out next May, if it comes out next May, let's be real, there are going to be some pretty intense conversations on what kind of price it will be, as well as what standard it's going to set for the industry once it actually does come out. And so all of these AAA companies are kind of waiting with bated breath to see who goes first to try to plunge into raising prices and see what they can get away with. However, if you were to get both Hollow Knight Silksong and Clair Obscur Expedition 33 off the shelf for their full price, you'd be getting 2 games for the price of 1. And may I remind you that those 2 games are probably the top 2 frontrunners for Game of the Year in 2025. And yes, if you've guessed, those are the 2 games I've been playing. So with that being the case, I've started to think a lot more about all of the games that people have gassed up this year. And if you really think about it, I mean, there have been a couple that were like AAA releases, such as, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Death Stranding 2, and now Ghost of Yote. But otherwise, most of the other games have either come from indie publishers or what we call AA studios, which, they make games that look like they have pretty large budgets, but in actuality, they have smaller teams, they have more creative freedom, and there's less overhead. Instead of like a $200 million game, you're getting something that looks really nice out of like a $20 million budget. That's kind of what a AA game is. But the thing that's more important about those titles is not only are those games priced fairly, but they also provide something that AAA games just are giving less and less of over time, and that is value. That is the crux of what I've been thinking a lot about lately with regards to video games, and what I want to talk about here, because it's important to hone on the point that because as much as people are struggling to make ends meet right now, just the basic necessities of life are so expensive, I do think it is important to also find opportunities to get some entertainment in your life and just escape from your troubles for a little bit, even if it's like, a fleeting escape, you know what I mean? Video games are a great way to be able to lose yourself in a fantastical world for a while and just have fun. But now that video games are getting out of hand with their prices, now that's getting further out of reach. And so to get a fair value out of a game really means something, especially nowadays. So I think it really does say something when you can get genuine value out of a video game, rather than a corporate product that comes from a company that wants to increase the prices of everything, such as the hardware, subscriptions like Game Pass, and that's a whole nother can of worms, and microtransactions too. So with all of that, as I get into this video, I will address that there have been plenty of games this year that have not only been received very well critically, but also have been praised for their good prices. But I'm going to highlight 3 specific games that I have personal experience with from this year that I think stack up to this principle of giving value for what you pay. And we'll start with My wife and I were huge fans of It Takes Two when it came out back in 2021, and it was actually my game of the year that year, you know, both for its very compelling story, but also super fun gameplay. Each level has its own unique set of mechanics to it while being wrapped up in this kind of like 3D platformer style game, and it felt so fresh and creative and varied. It never ran out of steam, like it always had new ideas to share with you. Split Fiction is a very similar title that comes from Swedish developer Haze Light Studios. The experience is exclusively co-op. Again, like It Takes Two, a huge variety in the type of gameplay that you do in a single, like, 2-hour-long chapter. Now, do I think it's as good as It Takes Two? No. The gameplay is undeniably very fun, but I just haven't really found the story to be quite as naturally interesting as what you got with It Takes Two. I mean, that game was about a married couple on the brink of divorce that are kind of forced into a scenario when they need to repair their marriage, and that's genuinely compelling. Whereas in Split Fiction, it's about, you know, two authors who, with very differing personalities, who get sucked into these realized versions of their own fictional worlds. Again, it's cool, just not as compelling, but that's all to say that it's still a fun game with a lot of entertainment value, a lot of creativity, and it's just super polished. There's about 15 hours of really solid gameplay in it, and the likes of which looks absolutely gorgeous, and it runs like a dream on the PS5. But the best part about that is, even though it's published by EA of all companies. I mean, we're talking about a game company that is so reviled that it was actually voted the worst company in America for a number of years back in the day. The game sold for $50 at launch. And moreover, just like It Takes Two, it also includes what's called the Friends Pass. Let's say you own the game, a physical copy of it, and you want to play online with somebody. You know, like if you have a buddy who lives on the East Coast, but you live in the West Coast, for example, you can boot up the game and they can download it completely onto their console for free and play it with you so long as you, one of the two parties in that scenario, owns it. And so you wrap all that together, and Split Fiction is this experience that EA could have probably sold for $70 because, you know, why not? It's EA. But they sold it at a cheaper price for $50, and they give this extra value to where, you know, if someone does want to play but they just simply don't have anyone to play with, like on the couch, this is a simple solution that enables them to do that with whoever they want to, as long as they have the right hardware. And I just think that's cool. That's the kind of value that AAA publishers should be giving with their products. So overall, Split Fiction is just a good game that justifies its own price tag. But on to the next game that I want to talk about, which is...
Even if we fail, we lay the trail for those who will come after. Right? We are Expedition 33.
Now, like the previous game that I mentioned, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 was also released for $50 at retail, but I think this price tag is possibly even more meaningful for the value that you get out of the experience. First of all, the development team Sandfall Interactive is a studio based out of France, consisting of about 30 core employees, a few of which, the founding members thereof, were actually former employees of Ubisoft who left the company to form their own studio. And then Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is their first game. And yet if you look at their Metacritic scores, I mean, that is really, really impressive for your first title. Now, completing Expedition 33 required the use of some contract labor here and there from what I understand, but as a whole, a title like this that has the kind of insane art direction and graphical fidelity is rare from such a small team of people. On a graphical basis alone, you can look at a game like this and probably think that it is justified for a $70 price, which makes it even more meaningful that Sandfall sold it for less and made it more accessible for the average gamer. What's more is that it offers a more entertaining and interactive turn-based RPG experience than pretty much all of its competitors. I mean, you look at any other RPG and it's just, hey, you choose your commands, you watch your characters do their thing, you wait for the enemy to do their thing, whereas this is certainly flashy in the way that like a Persona game would be, but it lets you parry and dodge, which just makes it so much more entertaining. At this point, my wife and I have only just barely completed Act 1 and then some, so we're almost like 20 hours into the game at this point, and that's even with me venturing off the beaten path and trying some of the optional boss fights that have very much so humbled me. Needless to say, I would expect that if my wife and I continue playing it at the pace that we're at right now, we should be able to finish it within maybe like 50 to 60 hours total. And in my opinion, that seems like a much more reasonable expectation of time that you should give than something like 100 plus hours that you might get from other JRPGs. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 seems like a strong example of a studio having something that they know is special and they truly want it to feel that way on the market, but they're offering it at a price so that no matter where you're at with your finances, offering up a chunk of money in order to experience it doesn't feel like as much of a detriment to your wallet, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to break the bank in order to experience what many people have now considered to be one of, if not the absolute best game of the year. And yet, there's still one other game that is really the reason why I made this whole entire video to begin with, and that is there is one simple fact for why it's even worth mentioning Silksong in a video like this. It was released for $20. And yes, this is significant because Silksong was one of the most highly anticipated games maybe ever? I mean, I was there watching every single Nintendo Direct, including the indie ones, and the live chat would be just absolutely boosted with people commenting, "Where's Silksong?" Shaw, and all those things. People, including me, really wanted this game, and especially because of the goodwill that Team Cherry had developed from how just dang good the original Hollow Knight was, and also for just how long the silence from Team Cherry went on before we even heard anything substantial about how the game was coming along. All of that just added up to this insane level of hype for the game, and because of that, if Team Cherry wanted to sell that game for I don't know, 40 or 50 bucks, sure, that'd be kind of surprising for the kind of game that it is, but people still would have paid for it, and Team Cherry would have made a substantial profit off of it. But what they actually did is so much more meaningful. They basically shadow dropped it by announcing its release date 2 weeks ahead of time. They didn't even make it available for purchase as a pre-order. I would watch Steam storefront like a hawk for every single day after the release date was announced to see when the pre-orders would go up. But it never did. It just straight up didn't become available until the actual morning of its release. And then because of that, Steam, the eShop, PlayStation Store, and the Xbox Store, they all crashed from people just wanting to go on there and play it. That right there is just smart business, man. Beyond that, I can appreciate that for after all of these years and how much insane anticipation was leading up to this release, and also how much unbelievable wealth that the literal 4-person team at Team Cherry, including Christopher Larkin if you count him, have obtained. These guys never lost sight of what got them in the enviable position that they have, They never forgot their fans and their Kickstarter backers, more importantly. These guys stayed humble, they knew what got them to the level of success that they had, and they just wanted to basically give back to the community with the price that they offered the game at. And not only did these guys not get greedy at any point, they basically defied the standards that AAA companies have set for, video game releases, high-profile ones anyway, where, all of these critics would get early access codes, and then you could get all these, meaningless pre-order bonuses for ordering the game early. None of that stuff. It was just a simple product launch at a very, very fair price. And honestly, I can respect Team Cherry for that. Now, I will acknowledge the fact that these guys have come under fire from a certain set of people who, indie developers, for example, who were basically thrown off course by this game coming out of nowhere, and then all of their plans to release the game basically went kaput. It's one thing for a game to be shadow dropped and then just completely shake things up for other developers, but the $20 price tag, it really caused some other developers to have severe imposter syndrome over the games that they were about to release. Now, I can definitely empathize with developers thinking that they might be overcharging people if they're pricing their game for $20, but maybe the thing that they made is nowhere near as expansive, artistically rich, let alone even as fun as Silksong can be. I get that as someone who is out here making YouTube videos, but also, goes to work every day and thinks about one day making their own small business, those are all things that I get. However, the thing is that Silksong shouldn't be looked at as like the new standard, but rather a wake-up call for other people. After all, and here's what I've really been building up to this whole time, the question is not what price companies should be charging for their games. We should be asking a more important question. What kind of value are these companies bringing to the table? I mean, yeah, Silksong might be $20 at retail, but it's such a rich experience that for what I paid, I felt like I didn't pay Team Cherry enough. Like, I mean, if they priced it for 40, 50 bucks, I would have been happy with what I got. It genuinely feels like a premium package that would have earned its price tag. I mean, I'm here well into Act 3 at this point with where I'm at in the game. I finished Act 2 and got both endings, that's all I'll say, after about 45 hours, and then I've gone on since then and done other side quests and bosses and stuff like that in the secret third act. Even though I still have more to go, like, I feel like I got my full and then some. $20 was a very fair price to ask for something that is so genuinely masterful in how it was crafted. I'm certainly glad, and I know my wallet is very grateful for the price that Team Cherry asked for this thing, but they could literally afford to offer it for a price of $20, and we have to acknowledge that other indie studios just don't have the resources or the flexibility that Team Cherry has, where those guys are pretty much independently wealthy. Needless to say, that doesn't mean that people who make these indie games have to feel pressured into offering a lower price simply because Silksong did. For gamers will show up if they feel that the value is there, especially if the deal that is being offered seems reasonable. I mean, Animal Well for $25, it was made by one guy. Sure. Hades 2 for $30. I mean, the original Hades was one of the greatest video games I've ever played, so why not? Balatro for $15? You're paying $15 for one of the most addictive video games ever made? Easy. Even Helldivers 2 for $40. I mean, yes, it's a multiplayer-only package, but have you thought about how popular the game is even to this day? There's a reason for it. If there's anything that you really should take away from this as a viewer, but also as a gamer, it's okay to limit yourself with how you spend your money. The thing about, spending money on things like video games is that you're never going to be fully satisfied with how many you purchase for your backlog. It's just going to keep on building up, and you're never going to feel like you have too much to play, and you're never going to feel like you have gotten a full extent of what you want out of life. And so it's important to just accept that you don't have to play everything. It's okay. You can limit yourself. Focus on the things that feel like they're a fair asking price and what will actually give you legit value in your life. After all, think about this. AAA developers, they might release a good single-player title every now and then, like, Sony releasing all of their single-player games, or Nintendo releasing, Breath of the Wild or something like that. Those are the rarities. What AAA companies really want to do is appeal to their shareholders. And what do shareholders want? A return on investment. A game that is going to give a return on investment is a free-to-play live service that just keeps getting people to come back, to suck in all of their time and their funds. Whereas indie developers, for the most part, all they care about is making a game that will last through the ages, that people will talk about and have fun, and if it's a one-and-done experience, okay, that's fine too. The games that are going to provide the most value to you at the end of the day are the ones that respect both your wallet, but most importantly, your time. After all, you can always grind and make more money later, but you will never get more time. And that's it. That's all I have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video as well as subscribing to the channel. For doing both of those things really does help my channel grow, and I will see you all in the next one.